Hey, what's up, Prosperity Nation? Randy Gage back again with another issue episode of the worldwide famous award-winning Power Prosperity podcast, hanging out with one of my friends edition. This is one of those shows where I get to just chat it up with somebody that you may know or you may not know, but I think is incredibly interesting and has some interesting thoughts about prosperity, happiness, and success. And that particular person is Jason Hartman. So first, Jason, welcome to the show.
Hey, Randy, thanks. It's great to be here. Great to talk to you. And I'm glad to know I just learned today that we are sort of neighbors too. You're in Miami and I'm in Palm Beach, so we're not too far away.
Yeah. So Jason is huge in real estate, having done literally thousands of deals and built a firm, sold it, opened another firm, has been an Inc. 500 fastest growing company honoree. So I think we share, I love real estate because I love leverage, and real estate is one of the ways in my portfolio that I apply leverage, but I certainly don't do it at the level you do it. You're all in on that, aren't you?
I'm glad you mentioned leverage because, Randy, it ties in so much with what you teach and what you help people do, whether it be, your newest book about rebirth. Really, if you sort of read between the lines on a lot of the things that you share there, it's about leverage for anything in life, whether it be investing. And of course, I love that characteristic about real estate or income property. You get lots of leverage through the great financing, or leveraging oneself, their mentality, their prosperity consciousness, leveraging relationships. I mean, leverage is really one of the keys to success in any part of life, I believe, because it in the real estate world, I use that as the comparison. It allows us basically to be bigger than we really are. Right? For example, if you buy a property and you put 20% down versus if you buy a mutual fund, you have to put 100% down. And so you can basically be 5 times bigger than you are, right? You can control 5 times more of an asset than you could in, say, the stock market or in many other investments. And that's one of the great things about it. But that's so true in other areas of life. And one area is knowledge, and then putting that knowledge into action. When I was 17 years old, I was going down the wrong road in life, didn't have any of the advantages some do growing up. I grew up poor in Los Angeles, and I was so lucky to find Zig Ziglar, Dennis Waitley, Earl Nightingale, and Jim Rohn, my four mentors early on. And I just listened to their audio tapes over and over and over again. And later, I discovered the National Speakers Association and got involved in that. And I met you there, actually. And, then I remember years ago in the 90s, I used to get your big marketing packages in the mail, and they were so incredible. I mean, you just, and marketing is leverage, right? That's another form of leverage, right?
Absolutely.
It's one to many. And so there are so many areas of life where leverage is just so powerful.
Yeah. By the way, behind you it says empowered investors.
Yeah, that's my.
What is that?
I got to look this way. It's backwards. That's my newest company, the Empowered Investor Company. That's a new Florida real estate company. Well, not that new anymore, but several months old now. Yeah.
I love the title.
Yeah.
Empowered.
Thanks. Yeah, and I've got a book coming out with that title soon, and that's really what it's about, being empowered, right? It's about the individual being empowered and taking control. So in the real estate investing world, one of the things we like is helping people become direct investors. So they own and control. Excuse me a second here. They own and control the asset themselves, and they are not subject to the whims of some outside party who is in control of their financial future. They don't relinquish that control to somebody else. So they're empowered because they are a direct investor.
Yeah. So interesting. I wrote a book in 2013, I believe. Risky is the new safe.
Ah, I love it. That's a great title.
And what became a huge hit, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, USA Today, #1 money book, Publishers Weekly, translated a bunch of languages. And was such a big hit because people were reading it because they thought I was insane.
Hmm.
Because in 2013, I was talking about CRISPR gene editing
Yeah.
technology,
Now everybody's talking about that stuff. Yeah.
cloning, predicted Brexit,
Hmm.
um, ocean front real estate versus ocean floor real estate,
Uh-huh.
taking vacations on the moon. And I was big on crazy concepts like this thing called Uber and Airbnb.
Hmm.
And so I was doing interviews and people thought I was crazy.
Right.
And now that book makes me look really, really smart
Yeah.
because I was saying that stuff when people thought it was crazy stuff.
Hmm.
One of the things I talked about in the book, any futurist would tell you, well, it's actually not that hard to predict the future because it's already here. It's just not evenly distributed yet. But then the other kind of mantra I think among futurists would say, you look at cycles and you look at, is this a linear cycle or a cyclical cycle?
Hmm.
And I'm looking at your YouTube channel and your kind of welcome message there. And you're talking about real estate and you say, well, there's linear, there's cyclical, and there's hybrid.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I thought that was fascinating that you also were looking at this concept in terms of real estate.
Yeah.
So how does that apply there?
Absolutely. Well, first, let me just comment on your book title. And I think that is so important. The concept behind that, Randy, is just critical. You know, on the financial spectrum, in the old days, and I'll say pre 1971, especially, and the reason that's important is because, of course, we went off the gold standard when Nixon took us off the gold standard in 1971. Before that, the best game plan was to play it safe, right? And to save money and maybe to invest it very conservatively. And the reason that that worked back then but does not work now is because the money was more reliable than it is today. And so a lot of people with the cryptocurrency revolution have become much more conscious of this now. But, years ago when I was teaching this stuff, nobody knew what I was talking about. In 2004, they thought, this is boring, right? Monetary policy, who cares? And unless they're an economist. And so, the biggest risk in life is to not take the risk many times, right? And the biggest security is to take a risk. And so you look at this in so many areas of life. So just to finish the money example, if we listen to our grandparents, they would say, save for a rainy day, right? And they were right, because in that world, before the game plan changed, before the rug was pulled out from under us, that was the best plan. But that plan no longer makes sense. It does not work anymore. And if people are still living by that old game plan, they're getting just creamed, because if they save money today, they are being hurt by it. They are getting
People don't
destroyed by
really
taxes
understand
and
the
inflation.
cost of money at basically zero right now.
Right.
And with what savings are paying and with what inflation is, if you're just saving money 2 years from now, you're probably going to be negative, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. With real inflation being much higher than reported inflation, and the likelihood of it being even higher in the future, you're losing money by saving money. So that's the riskiest thing, is to play it safe, right? The least risky thing is, believe it or not, to, for example, with income property, to buy income property, let other people pay the debt for you, and let inflation repay the debt for you. I trademarked a term many years ago called inflation-induced debt destruction. And it's really the hidden
Wow.
wealth creator with real estate. Yeah, I know
Wow.
it's a mouthful, isn't it? It's
Oh, but
this,
you can run with that.
yeah,
That's a good trademark to have.
it's a hidden wealth creator, because what people don't realize is that when we borrow money, we are actually getting paid to borrow that money if it's long-term, cheap, fixed-rate debt that someone else called a tenant is repaying for us. Inflation reduces the monthly payment on that debt, and it also reduces the overall balance on that debt. So most people in the old era thinking would think that's risky to borrow money, right? They would think the least risky thing is to pay cash. No, the most risky thing is to pay cash. The least risky thing is to get a mortgage and have the bank become your partner. And of course, it reduces your risk and increases your return. Another example, in the world of, say, one's career, right? We could do all the sort of old standard things. We could go to school, get a job, work hard, and have that career. But then the world nowadays is so alchemic, and it changes so quickly, and there's so much disruption all the time. You mentioned these disruptive companies like Uber, Airbnb, et cetera, right? These disruptive nature of the economy today will disrupt that whole plan we had, of playing it safe, right? The least risky thing is to adapt quickly, to take risk, and especially if it's asymmetric risk, where the reward can be very high for a relatively low risk sometimes. So we really need to rethink risk. It's not what it used to be. And we really need to rethink debt. In fact, I've always said debt is my favorite four-letter word. Okay. But now on your show today, I'll say risk is also my favorite four-letter word.
Yeah.
So,
And so now let me just make the disclaimer. We're not giving investment advice here. Consult your investment professionals, licensed, bonded, insured, certified, whatever. Two guys talking about success and prosperity and sharing our personal opinions.
Fair point. Yeah. This stuff is obviously complicated, legal issues, investing issues, tax issues. These things are super complicated, and you really need to, dive in deep. I'm just talking about some generic concepts.
Yeah. And so while we're there, before we leave it, where are you at right this instant? What are you thinking about Bitcoin, just for the hell of it?
Well, so I host many podcasts. My main one is called The Creating Wealth Show, and I've been doing that one since way back in 2005, when people thought, what's a podcast, 15 years ago, or 16 years ago, actually. But I launched another one several years ago called The CryptoCast, and I started interviewing a lot of the gurus in the cryptocurrency market. And my statement has always been this. I learned about Bitcoin when it was $74, and now it's like 37,000 maybe today, somewhere around there. And my statement was always this, Randy. I would love to be wrong about this. That was my first thing. Because I would love to see, I would love nothing more than to see a decentralized currency run by the people rather than a central bank like the Federal Reserve or the European Central Bank or the Central Bank of Japan or whatever, right? And I'd love to see that take hold and take over. But my concern was always that, look, the two most powerful entities the human race has ever known are governments and central banks. They have standing armies. They have aircraft carriers. They have police forces. They have nuclear missiles, right? These are the most powerful things we've ever known. And their main product of governments and central banks, whether they be the US government and the Federal Reserve or the European Union and the ECB, doesn't matter, right? Their main product is their currency. It's the dollar, the euro, the yen, whatever, the Brazilian real, doesn't matter. Okay. Currency is their product. And look, you have a product in your business. You author a lot of books and you do other products. I have products. And, I don't love competition because, they eat away at our market share, right? So a government and a central bank, they think the same way. They don't want competition either, right? And so I have always been extremely concerned that they could just make Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency for that matter illegal. And they still could do that. And that is a legitimate concern. However, when you look at it from an asymmetric risk analysis, and if you have some wealth, and you take 10% or 5% or 10% of your net worth and you gamble it a little bit, you do a little bit of speculating, the reward could be very high if it takes off and if it goes well. Okay. So, it's not something you want to put your lunch money into by any means. Only invest what you can afford to lose, and you're not going to be extremely depressed if you lose it. But there could be a big upside. And the thing that got me really more interested recently is that some big institutional players are starting to dabble in it.
Big.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why I'm just pulling up my phone to a chat that I'm having on Signal with, actually, I'm not going to say his name. It's a friend of mine. And actually, he'd probably prefer we keep him anonymous here.
A lot of these crypto people are like survivalists. They want to be real low key. Yeah,
and he's not one of those bunker survivalists or anything, but I just think for his privacy, I won't say his name. But and just full disclosure, I got into Bitcoin at $40.
Wow, even before me.
And I got out of Bitcoin, other than keeping one. Mm-hmm. I got out of Bitcoin at $14,040.
Yeah.
So I really looked like a genius. I really made a windfall. But now when you look at 37 and say, okay, if I would have kept, but I just felt when I sold it, it was at 14,040 and change. The space was getting so sketchy.
Yeah, I agree.
So many tokens coming out. Everybody doing ICOs instead of IPOs.
Right.
And I just said, there's so many grifters. There's so many con artists in the space. I'm getting out of it because I just think it might blow up. Mm-hmm. Now I'm really looking at getting in it again in a bigger way, just as you say, though, as I keep a percentage of my investments as this is high risk, high reward, but I don't like, okay, this one's paying me 800%. So I'm going to take everything and dump it back in there. For you guys who follow my work, if you go on the blog, I have my philosophy in an essay called Beat Your Burn Rate. So if you guys watching and listening want to know more, if you didn't read that on my blog, search for that, Beat the Burn Rate. But I just say, I feel like what I said in 2018 when I kind of did a online training and I offered my thoughts on where I was going to invest personally the next year or two. And I said, I think the crypto space is going to shake out into two cryptos. Mm-hmm. One will be the mainstream one that gets accepted by banks and Wall Street and whatever. And one will be a black market one, because that's really the drive for cryptocurrency is people like me, people like you who say, I don't trust government because I don't know if one of those, I live on Biscayne Bay on a little island. And I always wonder, is one of those aircraft carriers you mentioned going to pull up here? And so this thread with my friend, he's saying, wow, with BlackRock, Scaramucci, Novogratz, Fidelity, digital assets, all offering Bitcoin, how long, and this, we've been going back and forth on this for days, here's what he's saying. Non-cooperation is a good strategy for Andreessen Horowitz. They have the tools to speak directly to the audience, understand the space. He's talking about owning their own media firm. What you're seeing now. So there is a lot of shakeout. And I do think Bitcoin is probably still going to be the established one. I do think there's still going to be some kind of crypto that the drug dealers and the people who live in places like Venezuela, where, your inflation is 2 million%.
Yeah, it's Ridiculous. Yeah.
Just can't trust anything the government. I think there's always going to be a black market demand, but like you, I just say I can't go all in on that
Yeah,
because
no, you can't. Look, let me just share, if I may, a definition of an investment. Okay, and this may seem extremely elementary, but this is my definition of what an investment is. So here's how you know if you're investing or speculating and gambling. Okay, so one category is investing, and the other category is speculating and gambling. Okay, investments produce income, period. That's an investment. Bitcoin does not produce income. So it has to move into the camp of speculation and gambling. Now,
it's a trading play right now.
The problem is you can make money speculating and gambling. Okay, I've made many great deals speculating and gambling. Okay, so I don't want to minimize. I'm not saying that to minimize it. I'm just saying understand when people do these things, they have to understand what they're thinking. Like the unexamined life is not worth living, right? As Plato said. I think that was Plato, maybe it was Socrates, someone. And
Socrates, Plato, or Kid Rock, one
of the above. And so you must know what you're doing. Are you investing or speculating? So the bulk of your money should be investing. And investments produce income, period. That's it. Gold, silver, not investments. Bitcoin, cryptocurrencies, not investments. They don't produce income. Okay. Dividend paying stocks, they produce income. Real estate produces income. Vacant land is not included in that. It does not produce income. That's why I like to call real estate income property. Income property is different than real estate. Okay. I like income property.
Good distinction.
Yeah. So we want things that produce income to be like 90% of our investments, and maybe 10% we play in the speculation arena. Now, that said, let's talk about different cryptos. Bitcoin, in my opinion, is in a class by itself. There is nothing else like Bitcoin. There are a zillion other, there's a graveyard full of dead coins that didn't make it. The thing that makes Bitcoin completely different than any other cryptocurrency is that it is owned by the people. It's not owned by anybody. If the central banks and the governments want to shut it down, yes, they can certainly try to regulate it. They can certainly make it illegal. Look, there are other commodities that are illegal and they're still traded, but not much, okay? Cocaine is a commodity. It's illegal and it is traded. There are drug dealers that trade cocaine. Like, I'll give you this much cocaine for your boat, I guess, right? They'd probably say that. But the fact is, there's a very small market because it's illegal and no one wants to take the risk, hopefully. Okay. So, look, they could make it illegal and that could happen. But the thing about Bitcoin, they cannot send the police to knock on any door of any CEO. Because there is no CEO, okay? With Ethereum or any other coin, there is a CEO, okay? And they can go arrest them and put them in jail and shut the thing down. They can't do that with Bitcoin. It's a different animal. So it's in a different class.
Yeah, and the other thing to me that first of all, Bitcoin is the same in one sense as the dollar, the pound, the yen, the whatever, as it's a form of currency. You exchange it to buy or sell something. So that in and of itself means it's not an income producing asset, like you were just saying. Yep. It's a way to buy or sell income producing assets. And why people are investing in it is because they're trading on the speculation that it's worth 35, maybe it'll be worth 55, maybe it'll be worth 250, right? There's all kind of crazy thing. But so to me, the other thing that scares me is just that scene in the Matrix when the little things are coming to this ship and they do the electromagnetic pulse. And I just say, is there some way that Bitcoin and all cryptocurrencies could just be evaporated at some point? And that scares the hell out of me.
That's a good thing to be scared about. I don't think the worry is as much that it would be entirely wiped out from the face of the earth. The bigger worry that's probably more realistic is, yes, there could be an EMP blast like a nuclear bomb or a solar flare, not a nuclear bomb that blows you up. It's just the electrical charge from
Right.
that bomb that's far away. It may not affect you directly, but it'll fry every piece of electronics that's not in what's called a Faraday cage. Okay, and a Faraday cage is a protection mechanism, or underground does the same thing. Okay, but look, we can go way down the rabbit hole here. Okay, but look, the bigger fear is, and this has already happened to many people, millions of bitcoins have been lost and cannot be recovered. People forget their passwords, they lose their electronic wallets, they get stolen, they get hacked. Like, this is a very realistic fear. Okay, and yes, you can keep your money in the bank. Yeah, the bank could go under. If you're in the US, probably the FDIC will cover you at least up to $250,000. But the FDIC, if there's a real collapse, does not have anywhere near enough money to cover the bank accounts. I mean, it's like 1/24 or it's maybe even less. I don't remember. But look, everything has risk. The thing I want to impart from your book title, which is where we got off on this tangent, is that having a bank account has huge risk. Okay. And it requires attention. There is no such thing as passive income. Everything requires attention. You must pay attention to everything, even a bank account. Now, certainly in a bank account, you're going to get eaten alive by taxes and inflation. But even then, bank accounts require attention. Let me give you an example. I have a couple of accounts that I just parked $250,000 in, right? And I spread it around to different banks, just because I don't know where to put it at the moment. Okay.
And you want that FDIC insurance.
Yeah. So you just do $250 each account, each vesting for each LLC you have. And I get these letters from the bank that says, we're going to escheat, meaning give your money to the state because there's no activity in your account. Well, right. You even have to pay attention to this. Yes. So, I don't live in the state where that bank is anymore. And I'm like, I cannot come into a branch and do anything. I spend all this stupid time on the phone with the bank. And I said, look, send me a dumb little temporary checkbook. I'll write a check for $10. There's activity in my account now. Okay. So don't give it to the state. I mean, everything requires attention. It's a myth that you don't have to pay attention to things.
It's true. It's true. So listen, at 19, you really set out to make a name for yourself in real estate.
Yep.
And did. And talk about that. What was it like just going out at 19 years old and eye of the tiger and creating success at that
I like that eye of the tiger thing. That's good. I got my real estate license in my first year of college, and I had gone to a real estate seminar when I was 18, and I just wanted to kind of learn the business. So I figured I'll just get my license and, go to real estate school. And I started selling real estate while I was going to college at Long Beach City College, part-time. And, my first full month in the business, I sold 5 properties. And the amazing thing, Randy, is that I just realized that I looked around the real estate office, the little dumb Century 21 office I worked in at the time, and I realized these people weren't really working. They were just kind of showing up and complaining about things and complaining about management and how management wouldn't give them enough things. And, they were just like waiting for someone else to do something for them. And as a kid who looked like a baby, I mean, I look young now, fortunately, but I looked really young back then. And, I just went out and worked, and amazing things happen. You start making calls, you talk to people and they actually buy things. It's really not very complicated. And so my career evolved. 9 months later, I went to work for Remax. And 4 years later, I became the number 59 Remax agent in the world, actually, at age 24. I bought my first property back at age 20, and that was a rental property. I had a bad experience, and I thought, I had to evict the tenant, my first property. I lived at home with my mom, but I owned a rental property. And the tenant decided, they paid for a couple of months. They decided to stop paying. I had to evict them. My first experience. And I think back to that experience, and I think I could have just given up then. I would have been completely justified. Like no one would have blamed me to say,
Right.
this real estate investing thing, it just didn't work for me. And
Yeah.
now, I've owned hundreds and hundreds of units, uh, yeah, hundreds and hundreds. And, I've had probably thousands of tenants, or at least over 1,000 tenants by now. And, created a lot of wealth with investing, and also in the business, of course, too. So it's been a great career. And again, it goes back to leverage. It's a leverageable investment. And that's one of the very powerful things about it.
Yeah, leverage is just the sexiest thing in
Yeah,
terms
it
of
is.
wealth creation. You've got to, you have to escape the trading hours for money trap because
Yeah,
there's just not enough hours.
absolutely. There's not enough hours. And when investing, when you can get leverage, you can do more with less. That leverage thing, it reminds me of, you remember when you were a kid and, you sort of discovered your shadow, like you'd be walking on the sidewalk
Mhm.
and, you were just a little kid that was, 3 feet tall, but your shadow was 9 feet tall. That's
Right.
how leverage is. It makes you bigger than you are. You can just do more. And so it's a very powerful tool in any area of life, not just investing.
Yeah. So you mentioned those four speakers
Yeah.
who Zig and Roan, and that really impacted you. And I got to know all of them, so that's I share your appreciation for
Yeah.
them. What about books? Is there a particular book or two that was really impactful or influential in your life?
There are so many, and I can't say I'm as much of a voracious reader now as I used to be, because it seems like I more listen to audiobooks nowadays. But I used to read much more, and certainly the good old classic in the '90s, "The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People," great book.
Mhm.
But I also really loved and have read numerous times Earl Nightingale's Greatest Discovery, which is out of print, but you can still buy a used one online. And that is just an incredible, incredible poetic book. And that little book that I'm sure you've read called "As a Man Thinketh,"
Oh yeah.
because we all got to realize thoughts are things, and just like we need to control the food we put into our body, thoughts are the food for our mind, right? And we got to control what thoughts we let in there. And I love how you talk about that in your rebirth book, of budgeting time with negative people. If you've got to have them in your life and you can't change them,
Yeah.
you got to limit time and exposure to them, because really they do influence your thoughts. Jim Rohn, one of my mentors, and I worked for him for a little while just to learn from him. He said, your income is the average of the 5 people you spend most of your time with, and that is so true. If anybody listening to this doubts that the people you hang out with or talk to influence you just cannot doubt that. It's human nature. There's no way you can stop them from influencing you. They will influence you. We are social beings, and we pick up behaviors from people around us, and thinking patterns from people around us. There's no doubt about that. It doesn't matter who you are not immune. Look, we're dealing with like a virus now, right? As a world. And if you're around someone who has it, you're going to get it, right? So it's just like the thoughts are the same way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you come down on routines? Are you a routine guy? And if so, what's a routine that helps you be productive or successful?
I'm not a super like routine guy. I don't think, I mean, of course I have my routines, but I'm not like someone who has some more big morning ritual, or anything like that. Um, so I don't know. I don't know that I'd have a lot to say about that, honestly. Yeah, at the
Okay.
moment. But for
Yeah,
some
yeah.
people, it works great. I mean, I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying I don't do. Look, there's a lot of things I should do that I don't do. I'm just a human like anybody else. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. I hear you.
Yeah.
So what's the best place for people to connect with you?
My main website for my real estate company is jasonhartman.com, but really my podcast and my YouTube channel are really kind of the main things. My main podcast, I have many, is called the Creating Wealth Show, and that's been around for a long time. I've got almost 1,700 episodes of that one now, and I interview all sorts of thought leaders and celebrities, and it's just been great to influence people through that. And that's one of the great things that we have nowadays. Well, at least before the recent censorship, which is very scary,
Yeah.
this new Orwellian world we're living in. But at least before that, everyone, I would say even just a month ago, everyone has a voice. I don't know if I'd say that as much today, but still, more than historically at least. And you can share your thoughts with the world, and it's just a great thing, and it's such a privilege to be able to do that, and to influence people. And almost not a day goes by where someone doesn't send me a note of some sort that says, I made a big difference in their life. And that's just a very powerful thing. It's very, very great honor to be able to do that.
Yeah, and send me the that particular podcast and the YouTube, and we'll put links in the show notes for you guys who are on the treadmill or walking your dog or whatever. And when you get home, we'll have the links down there in the bottom. Well, thank you for being on. Thanks for sharing thoughts. Any final words you would want to share with people?
Yeah, Randy, just thanks for having me. It's great to talk to you, and you've been a person I've looked up to for really a couple of decades now. I've been following your work, and it's just so phenomenal. So it's great to actually meet you via Zoom here, and to be able to be on your show. So it's an honor. And I just say that really, we live in a world where there is so much opportunity. There is just no excuse to be unemployed. There's no such thing as unemployed anymore. Okay. There just isn't any such thing. There are so many possibilities and creative options available to people. And, income property is the most historically proven asset class in the entire world. Everybody should be owning income property, and that's what my real estate company helps people do. So they can check that out at jasonhartman.com. And just if you're not in the environment where you directly have people in your life who can be your mentors, who are doing more than you, always hang around, even if it's only virtually, through a podcast or listening to a show like this, with someone who is doing more than you, who can pull you up to that next stage in life. And you got to be hanging around and let yourself be influenced by people who are a step ahead of you, and they will pull you along and they will inspire you. So that's a very important thing. So with that, I'll just say, happy investing, and I wish everybody the best.
All right. Thank you, Jason. Everybody watching and listening, peace, love, and unicorns, and talk to you again soon.
Thanks, Randy. Thanks, everybody.